Camera speed.
Sound production, take one.
Action!
Welcome to From Beneath the Hollywood Sign. If you love old movies, Hollywood history, or the golden age of filmmaking, you've come to the right place. This is the podcast that talks about amazing stories of Tinseltown from another era. Hear fascinating conversations with writer-producer Steve Cubine, who quite literally lives just beneath the Hollywood sign, and actress-writer Nan McNamara. Now your hosts, Steve and Nan.
Hey everybody, we've got a great episode for you today, and it's all about birthdays. It's all about August birthdays, and it's all about icons who are still alive.
Yes.
How about that?
I always think, though, about summer birthdays and what a bummer it was when you were a kid if you had a summer birthday because you couldn't bring treats to school.
I know,
and
you didn't
pass
get those
them out.
Rice Krispie treats for all your your classmates.
Yes.
Well, my birthday was always Thanksgiving weekend, so same thing. I never got to do the fun birthday thing at school. So
Yes,
boo.
okay. Boo.
Well, we're going to give a big birthday celebration to this person. She's an iconic film star who Nan and I both love very much, and it is Ann Blyth. Ann Blyth, on August 16th, will turn 96.
Yay, Ann Blyth.
And she's still with us, and we love her, and we somehow hope she hears this.
Yes. Well, let's just dive right in. She was born in Mount Kisco, New York, and her mother, whose first name I really love, Nan,
I'll bet you do.
was from Dublin, Ireland. And apparently, though, Steve, not a lot is known about her father, Henry Blyth, because her parents separated when she was a baby.
I have a feeling there was some issue there because he is definitely not a part of her life.
And then really kind of left her life completely after the age of 10. Her mother and sister moved to Manhattan, where her mother took odd jobs to support the family. And Blyth would later talk about this time to a reporter by saying, "Life was one big struggle then, but mother managed somehow to keep me in parochial school and later in professional school."
That's right, because she attended the famed Children's Professional School, and some of their famous alum were my gosh, Milton Berle, Nancy Walker, Ruby Keeler,
Wow.
Ida Lupino, Donald O'Connor. I mean, it was the place to go if you wanted to train for a profession in showbiz.
Right. And she showed skills very early on
Yes.
in terms of her singing.
Yeah, she had a beautiful voice, even from an early age.
She performed on children's radio shows in New York for 6 years, making her first appearance when she was 5 years old.
Wow.
I know, that's amazing.
Weren't there child labor laws?
I know, right? Well, she must have loved it.
Yeah.
And then when she was 9 years old, she joined the New York Children's Opera Company, which is also amazing. And she really continued to sing throughout her career.
Yeah, and then when she was 13, and this is so cool, she landed her first Broadway role in 1942, and it was, what a role. It was in the renowned Lillian Hellman play Watch on the Rhine.
Right.
And Blythe played Babette, the daughter of Paul Lucas's character. The play was a huge hit. It ended up winning the New York Drama Critics Circle Award, and after 11 months of a New York run, Blythe then took it on the road in the touring company. And this included a command performance for President and Mrs. Franklin Roosevelt. How cool is that?
What a thrill. Yes. And of course, once again, it's another one of these discoveries. Producers
Yes.
from Los Angeles, Joe Pasternak and Henry Coster, famous director, saw her in the play and offered her a 7-year contract at Universal Studios.
Yeah, which is so funny how everyone's discovered by a talent scout in the audience.
Yeah.
Blythe made her screen debut at Universal in a film called Chip Off the Old Block in 1944. It was a comedy that starred two people that became very good friends of hers, Donald O'Connor and Peggy Ryan. And they truly remained lifelong friends with Blythe. She followed this up with a couple of kind of forgettable comedies, including her first leading lady role, which was a musical comedy called Babes on Swing Street, also 1944, which also featured her pal Peggy Ryan.
Wow.
And this was a fun story about kids putting on a show, imagine, and Blythe sang Peg O' My Heart, which is a great old tune.
But next up in her career is something that will forever change the trajectory. And we spoke about it on our Mother's Day episode.
And also our best films of the 1940s.
And our best films of the 1940s, you're right. Her career just took off when she won the coveted role of Veda, the evil daughter in Mildred Pierce.
Little Winch.
Oh my gosh, she's just so delightful in that film. I mean, delightful in a really bad way.
And apparently every young actress in Hollywood wanted that role, and she really had to fight for it.
Yeah. And it's really playing against what you would typically think of. So clearly the skill that took, good on her.
Yeah, because she was known for these kind of sunny, upbeat, positive girl next doors. And then she turns 180 and she's the evil Veda.
Right. And for those of you that may not know this film, if you don't know this film, go watch it. It's Joan Crawford's comeback role. It was a major hit and won and was nominated for a number of Academy Awards, including a win for Ms. Crawford.
Yeah, and Ann Blyth was nominated as Best Supporting Actress, as was her co-star Eve Arden. Neither one won, but still, just to be nominated at 16, that's incredible.
Yes. Crawford not only appeared in Blythe's screen test and really championed her for the part, but Crawford and Blythe went on to become lifelong friends.
Which is interesting because Joan Crawford was notorious for hating her female co-stars.
Yes.
But she didn't hate Ann Blyth. She really loved her, really took her under her wing, and they did. They enjoyed a lifelong friendship, which is a beautiful thing.
Yes. Now, a film like that normally would take a person's career to the next level, and unfortunately for Anne, she wasn't able to capitalize on it because in March of 1945, she was involved in a serious toboggan accident. She broke her back and had to wear a body cast.
And at the time of this accident, she was filming the movie Danger Signal, 1945, which was supposed to reunite her with her Mildred Pierce co-stars, Zachary Scott and Bruce Bennett.
Wow.
But unfortunately, she couldn't do the role, and Mona Freeman took over.
Right. So she was out of commission for about 8 months, recovering from the accident. And tragedy strikes again when her mother passes away at the age of 50. And Blythe, as anyone would be, was clearly devastated.
Yeah, absolutely. When she was finally healed and returned to work at Universal, she was in this minor drama called Swell Guy, which was in 1946, and she had a very small part in the Burt Lancaster prison drama Brute Force in 1947. And she also had the thankless role of Mickey Rooney's girlfriend in this boxing drama called Killer McCoy, 1947.
Okay.
So it was sounding a little bit to me like Universal didn't quite know what to do with her.
I think they didn't.
Yeah.
And in some ways I get that, because when you saw what she did in Mildred Pierce and you also saw this just sweet, beautiful person, you're like, how about just giving her a really meaty role?
Yeah.
Next up is A Woman's Vengeance, 1948. That's a film noir. It has a great cast: Charles Boyer, Jessica Tandy, Mildred Natwick, Cedric Hardwicke. But right after that film, same year, Another Part of the Forest, directed by Michael Gordon, another Lillian Hellman play. And this is the prequel to The Little Foxes, and Blythe is just amazing.
She's spectacular. She plays the very ambitious Regina Hubbard, who proves that the apple didn't fall too far from the tree because her father is the ruthless, duplicitous Marcus, played to perfection by Frederick March.
Yeah.
And of course, Betty Davis famously created the role of Regina in the earlier version of The Little Foxes.
Yes. And here's a clip from Another Part of the Forest, and Blythe, of course, as Regina, and Edmund O'Brien as her wicked brother Ben.
For a man who wants to get somewhere, you're not a bit smart. You should have figured out long ago that Papa's going to do just whatever you tell him not to do. Unless I tell him to do it.
You must give me a nice long lecture on Papa.
I'm busy now, taking him on a walk.
Oh, no, not now. We'll wait for a long winter night before the fire. And I'll think many things. Like how you used to be a beauty. But at 40, your face got worn and sour. Pop will still be around. And he'll interrupt us the way he does now. And call for you to come and put him to bed. And you'll get up and go, wondering how the years went by. And he's going to keep you right here with him. All his long life.
Oh, no, Ben. I'm going away. I'm going to Chicago. And once I get...
He's consented to the trip?
He will, by the time we're back from our walk.
You'll never get out of this house. Not unless you take my advice.
I'll make out all right. I always have.
Horace Giddens is in love with you. It's good society, that family, and rich. Solid, quiet rich.
Want me to marry money for you?
Of course I want you to marry money.
Why don't you take it up with Papa? I wouldn't like to be in the house the day you do.
Or the day he hears the gossip about you and John Bagtree.
Shut up, Ben.
Or is Bagtree going to Chicago, too?
Look, Ben, don't start anything. I'll get you in trouble if you do. Real bad trouble.
So Ann Blyth follows this up with a completely different kind of story. And you can tell by the title, in Mr. Peabody and the Mermaid in 1948.
It's such a sweet, funny movie.
I haven't seen it. I haven't seen this one.
It's adorable.
Is it?
Yeah, she actually plays a mermaid.
Okay.
She dons a tail and she, plays opposite the great William Powell, who's so good in this. And he plays this hapless man trying to convince anybody that he actually has met a mermaid. And of course, nobody believes him, and you can imagine what happens. Yeah.
Right. What's the film with Tom Hanks?
Splash.
Right. I wonder if they went back and looked at
I know. I wonder about that. That movie, Mr. Peabody and the Mermaid, was based on a 1945 novel, Peabody's Mermaid, by Guy and Constance Jones, and it was directed by Irving Peschel, and the screenplay was by the great Nunnally Johnson.
Wow. Okay. So she follows that up with a comedy, Top of the Morning, 1949. She's the daughter to Barry Fitzgerald, and she's being courted by Bing Crosby.
Doesn't he seem a little old for her?
He does, indeed. She is still only, at this point, like 20 maybe, or 21.
I know. It's so funny. That was the way they did things back in the day.
Yes, exactly.
Another movie she's in 1949 is Once More My Darling, opposite Robert Montgomery, and also Free for All, 1949, with Robert Cummings, another Robert. By now she's starting to feel kind of confident in her career, and she begins to fight back against inferior scripts, which is something I don't think she ever felt confident enough to do in her earlier career. So in April of 1949, she took a suspension, her first ever, at Universal because she refused the lead in a movie called Abandoned, 1949, which was a film noir about a baby adoption crime ring.
Well, that just doesn't sound very good at all. I don't blame her.
I know, maybe she was right.
So back from suspension, Universal loans her out to Sam Goldwyn Productions, and she plays opposite Farley Granger in Our Very Own, 1950, where she plays a young woman who learns she's adopted, and she goes out to reunite with her birth mother, played by Ann Dvorak.
Yeah. This time she also did Katie Did It, 1951, which is this comedy where she's just delightful as this small-town girl who finds love is very complicated in the big city. And in this movie, she also made a lifelong friend in her co-star, Mark Stevens, who came to view Ann Blyth as his little sister. And they had a really lovely friendship their whole life.
So 1951, she gets loaned out to MGM, which is going to kind of shift the way her career goes here. She's the female lead in The Great Caruso, in 1951, starring Mario Lanza as the great singing sensation. And this film was a big success, and it got MGM interested in Blyth, who seemed to understand her a little bit better than Universal.
I know, because back at Universal, they still didn't quite know what to do with her. She goes from this gothic film noir, Thunder on the Hill, in 1951 with Claudette Colbert, where she plays a convicted killer, to the Raoul Walsh-directed seafaring adventure film The World in His Arms in 1952, opposite Gregory Peck. And then she does this family comedy, this silly comedy called Sally and St. Anne with Edmund Gwenn. So she's still all over the place at Universal.
Okay. Now, following year, 1953, MGM, she's loaned once again to MGM to sub for the pregnant Elizabeth Taylor in the adventure drama All the Brothers Were Valiant. And she's cast opposite two pretty amazing leading men, Stuart Granger and Robert Taylor.
Not too shabby.
And it's after this picture that MGM says, and come on, join us for a long-term contract.
And of course, she jumped at the chance.
Right.
And it was also in 1953 that Blyth married. She married Dr. James McNulty, whom she met through a friend of hers, singer Dennis Day, who happened to be McNulty's brother.
Okay, so did Dennis Day change his name?
Yes, that was definitely a stage name for Dennis Day. It's probably Dennis McNulty.
Okay, Right.
And she had a very formal Catholic wedding, which was the social event of the season.
Wow.
You know, the couple received a special commendation from the Pope. The bride's dress was designed by MGM costume designer Helen Rose, and her bridesmaids included actresses Joan Leslie, Jane Withers, and Betty Lynn.
Wow.
So quite a Hollywood splashy wedding.
Do you think it was at St. Charles of Borromeo if she ended up moving to Toluca Lake? Do we know?
I don't think so.
Where?
I've heard which church it was, but I don't think that was it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, the couple settled down in Toluca Lake, and they raised 5 children, 3 girls and 2 boys.
Yeah, Anne got busy.
She did. Before we continue hearing about her career at MGM, let's hear this week's Hollywood Pop Quiz.
Well, the pop quiz today, of course, is about Ann Blyth. In the 1970s, Ann Blyth became the national spokesperson for a snack brand, which was famously poked fun of in a classic episode of Designing Women, where Jean Smart does the most incredible monologue about Ann Blyth selling this product. What was the brand?
Ooh.
What was she hawking on TV in the 70s?
Yes. Well, we will be right back with the answer to that and more about the exquisite Ann Blyth after this.
All right, Steve and Ann will be right back, but first, another stop on the Hollywood tour. One of the single most popular Hollywood classic films is, without a doubt, Casablanca. But did you know that Humphrey Bogart was a full 2 inches shorter than his leading lady, Ingrid Bergman? Well, to hide that from the audience, the producers got creative with some very simple tricks. For example, in some scenes, Bergman would have to slouch down on a sofa, and Bogart would be sitting on extra cushions. In other scenes, Bogart would stand on apple boxes out of the camera's shot, so he would appear taller than Bergman. I am shocked, I say, to hear these Hollywood tricks. And now back to Steve and Ann from Beneath the Hollywood Sign.
Welcome back, everybody. Steve, before we jump back into Ann Blyth, who are this week's listeners of the week?
Well, this week we have 2 listeners of the week. We fancy. And this one it's 2 friends and colleagues of mine who have been such cheerleaders of our podcast from the very, very beginning. So our listeners of the week are Ann Tower and Mark Aria. And Ann is an incredible producer, and Mark is a really talented costume designer, and they have just been the biggest cheerleaders of our podcast. Mark actually wants us to do an episode about the great costume designers of the golden era.
Oh, that would be fabulous.
So we're going to see if we can make that happen.
Well, Mark and Ann and Mark, thank you so much for listening and for supporting us, and we just really appreciate it. All right, when we left off, MGM had offered her a contract, so she's done with Universal, she's back at MGM, and they really lean into her talents as a singer, right?
Yeah, finally, because Universal
they kind of
tapped into it a little bit, but not really like MGM did.
So she stars in 1954 in Rosemary alongside the amazing Howard Keel. It's a musical western directed by a pretty impressive director, Mervyn LeRoy. And then after that, The Student Prince, 1954, another musical directed by Richard Thorpe about an innkeeper's daughter who wins over a prince.
Well, I like that.
I do too.
Innkeepers' daughters, princes. It's like the Meghan Markle story. Maybe she wasn't an innkeeper's daughter, but you get it.
Yes, right. A common person.
A common person.
Yeah.
An actress.
Right. And then in Kismet, in 1955, Vincent Minnelli directed musical based on the popular stage musical. She's reunited again with Howard Keel. So
they were so good together.
Yeah.
Their voices together.
Oh.
There was something about the 2 of them. It was just magic.
Yeah, he was really something.
Yeah.
So the only problem is, though, that she doesn't really get to do any of these darker characters. She's pretty much in the sunny musicals until she gets cast in a film noir called Slander in 1957 with not only Van Johnson, but this podcast's favorite bad boy, Steve Cochran.
Oh, we love it. And Slander is a really underrated film noir.
I have not seen that.
Oh, it's really, really good. And it really takes a swing at the whole gossip rag
Yes.
world. Particularly, I think they're taking a shot at Confidential magazine, and it's just really good and intense. And and she's also right after that, she's in the autobiographical drama The Buster Keaton Story, where she plays the wife of the classic silent film comedian, which is played by her friend Donald O'Connor.
Wow.
And the film was directed by, this is interesting, by future best-selling novelist Sidney Sheldon.
Who knew?
Who wrote all of those airport novels that we all, those trashy novels we all bought.
We all love.
And everyone was made into a miniseries with Jacqueline Smith in the 80s.
Yes. All right. Well, she's going to take some time off to be with her kids and her husband. But before she does that, she's in 1957, The Helen Morgan Story.
Yes.
Which told the story of the turbulent life of the singer. And this is another one of those films where the role that Ann Blyth got was coveted by every actress in town.
Everybody in town wanted it.
So she coerces her agent to get her an audition. And even though she doesn't look anything like Helen Morgan.
Nothing.
And despite having a lovely singing voice, she wasn't a torch singer, which is very different.
Yeah.
But she gets cast, and she gives one of her loveliest performances with Paul Newman.
Not a shabby leading man. And it really is, I think, one of her best performances. She really gets to delve into some dark areas, and you get to see a side of her that you probably haven't really seen
since
Mildred Pierce,
yeah.
which was really wonderful. And I know she wanted to sing herself.
I would think.
And I think it kind of broke her heart that she wasn't allowed to.
Yes.
But the voice just didn't quite match Helen Morgan, and everybody was familiar with Helen Morgan's voice, so they brought in Gogi Grant, the great Gogi Grant, who has an incredible voice, and she dubbed the voice for her.
Yeah, I suppose it would be like Joaquin Phoenix in the Johnny Cash movie Walk the Line. If he can't sound like Johnny Cash, it's kind of not going to work.
Yeah, you got to get a voice in there that will do the trick.
Right.
And Gogi Grant was just the ticket.
So she takes a break, and she isn't really able to get back into films.
Yes, because once her kids got older and she really wanted to get back into the movie business and restart her career, it was a little bit too late. And I know she gave this great interview with Michael Smythe of the Toronto Star, and she said, I never gave up on the movies gave up on me. There just were no parts for her. So she turned back to her first love, which was theater.
Well, and I think there were no parts for her because she was at, the ripe old age of 40 or something. I mean, which is so ridiculous. Nowadays.
Yeah.
She would be able to re-enter. She would be able to work again.
Absolutely.
But the theater.
Yeah, which she loved, and she went back to it. And, beginning in the 1960s, she became very, very active in theater. She appeared in productions of Showboat and Carnival, The King and I, South Pacific, Kiss Me Kate, all the great grand dame singing roles.
And
she did them.
would be perfect in those parts. Yes. She also does a lot of television. She's on Wagon Train, The Dick Powell Show, Twilight Zone, Burke's Law, Switch. Switch,
Robert Wagner, Sharon Glass, and Eddie Albert.
Yes.
I love that show. Charlie Callis, too.
And Quincy. And of course, who doesn't show up on Murder, She Wrote, right? Someone like an Ann Blyth.
Murder, She Wrote was just the savior. It just allowed all these great old classic stars to come back and do some fun roles. And, yeah, I love that.
She also, during the 1990s, began touring with other singers, including Bill Hayes and John Raitt, and they would go on singing songs from the film era on tour.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to go to the TV Academy one year, and I heard Ann Blyth and John Raitt singing. And it was all the great standards of the 40s and 50s, and it was just a magical night. I mean, her voice, and this was probably in the 90s.
Okay.
Her voice had not changed one bit.
Wow.
She was still had that beautiful, crystal clear soprano that she was so famous for.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just magic to see her up there.
The other thing in learning about her career and doing a little more research, she has been very generous with interviews on TCM, and you can find a lot of them on YouTube. And she is such a good sport. She talks about Mildred Pierce. I mean, they had Mildred Pierce in drag in one of these, and she just took it in stride and laughed laughed, and she was just absolutely delightful. Hearing her words describe her career, it's really lovely.
And, she was also very philanthropic, particularly in the Catholic Charities area.
Okay.
That was sort of her go-to charity, and she was really active with that and so many other things that she supported. So she really gave back as well, which was a lovely thing.
And I bet she still is.
And she is, probably, I'm sure.
She and her husband enjoyed a happy 54-year marriage.
Wow.
Until he passed away in 2007. That 54-year marriage says a lot in Hollywood.
Yeah, it reminds me of Eva Marie Saint and Jeffrey Hayden.
Yes, absolutely.
Some of the happier marriages in
Yes.
Hollywood. Miss Blyth, as we mentioned, will be 96 on August 16th. So happy birthday, Miss Blyth, and thank you for the great movies, the great music, the great legacy, and we love you.
Happy birthday. And just as a tease for next week, continuing our August birthdays with another living, iconic movie star, Vera Miles.
Oh, this is going to be good.
Oh, I can't wait. We hope you'll tune in for that one as well. I think it's time for the answer to this week's Hollywood Pop Quiz.
Well, and the question was, in the 1970s, Ann Blyth became the national spokesperson for a snack brand, and she was sort of made fun of by Jean Smart in Designing Women. What was the snack brand?
Hostess.
It was Hostess cupcakes.
And Twinkies.
And if you want to laugh, I mean belly laugh, go on YouTube and find the clip of Designing Women where Jean Smart does this monologue about Ann Blyth hawking these cupcakes on TV. It's worth it.
It is. And if you remember who Rula Lenska is, you can also email us.
I know she even gets a jab in at Rula Lenska and was it Alberto VO5?
Yeah, VO5, which I just think would make your hair greasy. I don't know why anyone would put that stuff on your hair.
Yes.
Anyway, thanks so much for being with us today, everybody. If you would, we would love it if you would give us a 5-star review and follow us on social media. Our handle is @From Beneath the Hollywood Sign, and you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and you can watch the podcast on YouTube.
And we love your emails. Please keep them coming. You can write us at info@FromBeneathTheHollywoodSign.com.
That's this week's view.
From Beneath the Hollywood Sign.
You've been listening to From Beneath the Hollywood Sign with Steve Cubine and Nan McNamara, the podcast that celebrates amazing stories of Tinseltown from its golden era. Join us next week for another episode and learn something else about Hollywood you probably never knew. Take a moment and give us a 5-star rating and a positive review. And tell your friends about us too. It'll help grow the podcast. Visit Steve's website at FromBeneathTheHollywoodSign.com. The executive producers are Steve Cubine and Nan McNamara. Executive producer and post-production supervisor Lindsay Schnebley. This podcast is part of the Airwave Media Podcast Network. Visit airwavemedia.com to listen and subscribe to their other fine shows like The Box of Oddities and The Shallow End with Schnebley and Toth. Copyright 2024, all rights reserved. That's a wrap.